Welcome back to Newsmaker Live, and thank you for staying tuned. In a few moments, we'll be taking your calls on this program so that you can ask your questions as far as VAT is concerned, so that you can have a clear understanding. This is what this program is all about. So we can give you a clear understanding of VAT, what the implications are when it comes into effect on September 1st, 2012. This is not to hit the VAT office or anything, but so that we can begin to understand VAT is coming. We have to accept it. We have 3 months, 2 months, 3 months to do so. So we just need to prepare ourselves economically, you know, adjust our budgets if that needs to be done, so that we can accommodate VAT when it comes. And most of the people involved in the administration have said that with VAT, it will replace a number of taxes. The C tax, the consumption tax, is the biggest one of them. And as Ms. Sonson was saying, of course, Adria Sonson, she's the coordinator for the VAT implementation project, that there are taxes on some goods ranging from 0 to 35%. So on those goods that have a 35% tax, of course, the price may go down depending on what the businesses decide to do as far as pricing is concerned. But for those that are at 0%, obviously we would expect that they would go up. Then again, depending on the business owners and how they decide to price. Of course, this would only apply to merchandise that is not price control, because the government would have a say in that. Talking about that, what about price controlled items? How will VAT affect those?
Okay, a lot of price control items are actually exempt items, not attracting the VAT. Okay, so when we look at things like the sugar, flour, and some of these items, and the list of price control items, when you compare that to the exempt items, you may find many of them in there. But of course, if the prices are controlled, they will remain controlled in accordance with the price control rules and regulations. In terms of, and let me just make the statement with regards to prices. As we indicated, it's a business decision, but we don't expect to see exorbitant increases in prices. And in some countries, it has happened, and it's a concern for some consumers that, you know, prices, you have people saying, well, after that, the price will get high, and all the kind of thing, you know. We not making any statement to give any room to anybody to raise prices exorbitantly. Even if there is supposed to be a price increase, we expect the increase to be moderate. We're not looking for any exorbitant increases, and when there are increases to some extent, we expect, especially for those goods that are already on island that have attracted the consumption tax, we expect that once they have moved out of inventory, and when you just and when those that have only attracted the VAT are being sold, that there should be some positive movement in the price, positive in terms of the consumer. So pricing, we don't want to lay it out there that people should expect a huge increase in prices or whatever it is. Not that at all. But there will be some movements in prices, and the consumers should be aware of that.
Well, I mean, the market forces would take over there, because it would all depend on supply and demand. I mean, if the businesses are willing to supply a product, but then the price that they charge is way above what consumers are willing to pay, then the consumers have the right, as they will do, to stop buying that product and probably look for a substitute.
Choice to buy at another establishment.
Right, yes. where the price is more reasonable. So all these things come into effect. It's not a matter where, you know, this is the price, you have to take it. You can actually leave it and choose to buy something else or somewhere else.
And hopefully the whole exercise in VAT implementation and so on will give the consumer a chance to be more informed in terms of making purchasing decisions. Should I buy this? Should I not buy this? What's the rate of tax on that, and so on. So again, the visibleness or the visibility of the taxes it makes a difference, should make a difference to the consumer, because, you know, can I afford this month, or should I just buy the basic food items, and if I go beyond that, what is the rate of tax, and, you know. So VAT, for the most part, other than the, you know, the implementation issues and whatever, it brings to light the discussion on taxation. And for us, well, for any tax administrator, that is a positive thing, because generally we don't speak, there hasn't been much public debate on taxation and tax issues. I think it is right for St. Lucians now to become more aware of taxation, its impact, its implication. You know, gone are the days when we were talking about larger government, and government was supposed to provide and so on. We need to get this awareness that all of us have to contribute towards the tax, and that's what that provides, an opportunity for everybody to contribute towards taxation. And what is taxation? You know, is it just a case of government just taking money from people via TVI, according to the older people? What is it being used for? So if we begin that discussion, we continue that discussion, people have to get an appreciation of the value of the services that government provide. We see the roads, we demanding better health facility. We're talking about universal education at the preschool level, universal health. I was listening to the radio some time ago, and I heard the two announcers were discussing something, and somebody suggested, why not build a bridge over from Point Seraphine to Latok? And you know, and we have all these dreams and aspirations for our country, but where does the money come from? So the discussion on taxation will bring to light, you know, where is it that government get the money from, and what it is that they do. And for, you know, when people contribute towards things in general, they have a better appreciation of these things. You know, growing up in the community before, somebody puts a bucket under the standpipe and they turn their back until so it could fill whenever. The bucket will fill whenever. They don't have to turn back. But the minute you know they have their pipe borne water into their own home, you know, they make sure the tap is closed. Close the fridge so that if you keep it open for too long, the light bill will go up. Put off the light and this kind of thing. But when it comes to government facilities and so on, we figure out we could use and abuse and so on. So if we appreciate that we contribute towards the providing of these things, then we have a better appreciation, and we will perhaps not waste. And our demands sometimes will be a bit more tempered, because we recognize, you know, there are limitations. So I'm happy we're having the discussion on VAT, taxation in general, and I really want it to continue. In fact, one of the things that works against us at the tax administration is that usually our budget for advertising is not much, and we have to make use of GIS and so on. But GIS is rich, you know, it makes it happen for us, but still sometimes you want to do a bit more.
Yeah, the reach is not as great.
So in terms of VAT, I think there's a big audience now. A lot of people want to discuss VAT. I wouldn't have, perhaps if I wanted to just discuss income tax, you perhaps would not have invited me.
Well, probably in April, you know, when it's due.
Or if you did invite me, to be for maybe about half the show, and you'd say, you know what, go your way. But that is very topical, and for me, I'll take the opportunity to discuss taxation in general, because I think people need to have an appreciation of taxation, and it is used to support whatever efforts government have in ensuring that our country meets its social needs, ensure that the infrastructure is in place, and ensure that there's progress and development. So
talking about the social needs, and you know, I mean, one of the greatest concerns that people have expressed is the impact of VAT on poor people in particular.
Okay.
What kind of impact do you anticipate VAT having on poor people? Already, you know, they're in a position where they cannot meet their daily requirements, you know, for food, for housing, for clothing, and other necessities of life. Okay.
Well, in fact, perhaps the discussion about VAT being a regressive tax, that's where it should stay. People make that statement that VAT is a regressive tax. It means that it impacts the poor to a greater extent than the more able. Um, Again, that I will not dispute. But then what VAT will provide for us is an opportunity to provide for the lesser able. Okay? In terms of the health facility, you go to the Victoria Hospital, you pay, say, about $50 to see the doctor, to get the x-ray done, to get medication and so on. If you were to go to another facility, you'd have to pay maybe about 6 times that, about $300. Okay, so government have to provide these facilities to the poor. Now, it doesn't mean that it actually costs government $50 to provide, you know, and that, you know, it may have cost government just as much as it's cost the private enterprise to provide. But government has to provide these facilities.
Right.
Now, it cannot be a case where, you know, some people just don't contribute, because it means that those of us who are being taxed will continue to be taxed, and, you know, and to a great extent, those of us who are taxed are not the ones who benefit from some of these subsidized services, goods and services that government provide. So as well, we also have what we call the zero-rated item. Well, not the zero-rated, but the exempt items that when you look at them, are a basic basket of goods that anybody will consume. So consideration was given for the poor, as well as we're looking at, there's some other, and in the Prime Minister's budget pronouncement, you heard him made he made a statement about the provision of, well, STEP is going to continue, some other social programs that are going to continue, and so on. So all of these are taken into consideration, the impact, the possible impact on the poor. It's not a case where no consideration was given to the poor. We have to provide them services, but to some extent, they too have to contribute, all right? In terms of providing employment and so on, some of these new projects that have been laid out by the Prime Minister will provide some employment. So there, to an extent, to a great extent, I should say, their concerns, their issues have been taken into consideration. And again, you cannot, I'm not sure you can totally eradicate poverty. You could try to provide for them. You could try to provide opportunities for development and to move from their social situation. But all of that will cost the government.
Yeah, even the good book says that the poor will be with us forever. So, I mean...
Yes. So it's a matter of mixing and matching what their contribution will be, who will contribute, and so on. And
do you support the idea, though, that VAT is in fact a regressive tax, that it affects the poor in a greater, well, it has a greater impact on the poor than it has on others in society?
Well, as I say, again, you want to, the direct impact, you could say, well, it's regressive, but in terms of the turnaround to provide all the social amenities and so on, at very subsidized rate, to some extent, that removes what you would call the regressiveness. So I wouldn't totally agree that it is a, you know, regressive tax. Upfront, perhaps it seemed like that, but when you measure, when you add to the equation what the social amenities and everything else that the government will turn around to provide with the revenue, then to me, to some extent, it will lose some of the regressiveness.
Great. We're speaking here with Miss Adria Sonson. She's a coordinator of the VAT implementation project. We'll take a break right now. When we come back, we'll be taking your calls on this program, so stick close to your phones. She'll be taking your questions on Newsmaker Live when we return right after this.